Welcome back to a Deeper Dig Conversation Series, episode 42. As you can see, we're out here in beautiful LA, beautiful wind, beautiful weather. But today I am with someone who creatively I really appreciate. I'm really a massive fan of her work and everything that she's doing as an artist. And, the first song I ever discovered was When You Mean By That. And I think ever since then, it's just been this constant progression of her growing as an artist, her growing as a storyteller, and just seeing her along the journey and just being part of that has been really, really fascinating to see. So, Madeline, welcome on.
Oh my gosh. Wait, that was so nice. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. You guys have always been so kind to me and my music, and I'm so happy we get to do this in person now.
Yeah, happy to do it. One of the things I was saying, I feel like this has been a long time coming. Like I mentioned, I've been discovering your music for such a while now. And one of the things that I'm so curious about is, how would you describe yourself as a person? We know the music side. We know that you cover a lot of subjects and a lot of categories with your music. But you as a person, how would you describe yourself?
Yeah. Ooh, how would I describe myself? I think presently, what's going on in my life right now, I would say a jack of all trades is something I take a lot of pride in and find a lot of value in. Every day is kind of different for me and what I'm doing, whether it's fashion related, music related, things like that. I am somebody who always likes to try new things and feed my creativity in different ways. I guess another way to describe myself as a person is just somebody who really wants to lead a creative life, whether that just be writing in the morning or the flower arrangement or what you cook and things like that. I think that's something that I try to think about every day.
Yeah, and you as a storyteller, I feel like there's so many aspects. Well, at least for me, when I hear your lyrics, there's this sense of love and this sense of connection that I always hear within your music, but it's portrayed in so many different ways, And I'm curious about whenever you approach yourself lyrically, going into the studio or just going in for writing, how do you navigate through that?
Yeah, that actually means a lot because I feel like this new music, I feel like this new music is my strongest, lyrically. And what's so funny is that it's all about love. I feel like that subject matter is something that I tended to avoid early on in some of my music or the music that you found from me. Whereas it was probably always in the song, but it wasn't maybe the thing at the top of my mind while I was writing about it. But it was relationship dynamics and stuff like that. But this new music, it's pretty much all love songs. And I think maybe it was maybe I was just trying to make it more difficult for myself earlier on. And now I'm just kind of leaning into this feeling because I am so fortunate to have so much love around me from friends and my loved ones and family. Yeah, so I think that's kind of the new thing on my mind.
Yeah, and I feel like that is definitely something that I hear in your music. And one of the things I'm curious about too is who out of that category of people that you love or people that you respect too, who are some people that got you inspired to just kind of go about music or just tie the lyrics in? I'm curious on your inspirations.
Totally. I think Caroline Polachek is my number one inspiration. I think she does such a great job of narrative or more abstract lyrics. I think if you take her her first record, Pang, and then also Desire, I Want to Turn Into You, Pang had more of a narrative driven storyline throughout the whole thing. Whereas Desire was probably more of her chairlift references, kind of her older music of that more abstract lyricism. And I think I've always been obsessed with finding the balance of that.
Yes.
I think I'm definitely more drawn to abstract lyrics. But I would also argue that, a lot of people are probably leaning a little bit more towards like a narrative
Yeah.
theme and with lyrics right now, especially if you think about like how songs explode nowadays. It's usually like a line or the story, or like, especially for like in pop culture references, like I think also in like pop culture references of, you know, like some star is dating somebody else, and like when that breakup song comes out, like the story pushes the song as well, you know, not to, you know, I think that's for whatever reason what people like grab onto. So it's like, yeah, finding that balance as somebody who does like a more abstract lyric.
And I'm finding that people latch onto that because it almost, like, in a sense, it feels relatable, right? Like, it shows that, like, in a way that, like, someone who's, like, up here, it can be very relatable. Like, we all go through our faults and our flaws.
I think people really crave, like, I think people really want to understand and relate to things. And so the more, especially, like, I think it goes back to, you know, when I was young, listening to my favorite artists, like I wanted to know everything about them. I wanted to know everything about the song because I felt like it deepened my relationship to the song. But at the same time, it was my own experience that connected me with this song in the first place. And so I think that's kind of also where I love the abstraction of like, you can hear a line and I can hear my own story in there, you know. But again, I think what's so nice about music is that it does connect us through a lived experience, shared experience that we all have.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned Caroline because I know, like, back when she was part of Share With, and one of the songs that stuck with me was Bruises. I listened to Bruises, and, you know, there was a deeper meaning than what the lyrics provided. And, like, everything that you said, like, I definitely hear that, like, relation. And so I'm curious, like, has there been a song or, like, anything that you released that, yeah, the lyrics is not, like, in a sense surface level, but like there's a deeper meaning to like the song itself? Like, has there been any music like that from yours?
Yeah, I would say maybe the song that I feel like got the closest to that would be Your Own Kiss. You know, that song is basically about how like the first kiss of something with somebody can like change your life. You know, it can set you in a new relationship, it can set you on a new path, like all of these things. And I really wanted the lyrics to kind of feel like the rushed like feeling of the night as it was like coming up to that moment in the verses. And you know, I ended up kind of posing it as a question to this other person of like, would you experience the same thing as me?
And one of the things that I like about Your Own Kiss, it's like there's a lot of action verbs in there. And like, you know, like words like get close, you know, that's something that is an action. And I find that to be quite intriguing. And one of the things that also like struck me about it was the production as well. Like, and I'm curious, like with the production, like what was the inspiration behind the production?
Yeah. That was actually like one of my like second or third sessions with this producer, Austin Ward, who I love dearly. And we've made a bunch of music together. And that night, I think Austin has like a million synths. And so he kind of had one, he just had one like rolling. And I had kind of gotten that melody for the verse. And it felt like super collaborative of I could kind of like sing the guitar lick to him and, or the vamp like chord hits to him. And it all kind of like spilled out pretty fast. We wrote it in like an hour and a half, something like that. Yeah, sorry, was that a good answer?
No. That's perfect. And so, like, you know, you just released Out of Us pretty recently. And so I'm so curious about like the process. Like, tell me about the process with Out of Us. Tell me about everything that went into it.
So Out of Us was actually the first song I'd made with Austin. We had met writing for another artist, and like 2 years had gone by. He was somebody who I always loved his production, and he had actually messaged me about like my own music, and I think I was just like too nervous to send him my demos. I didn't think they were good enough at that point, and I don't think I sent them. And then I reached out later being like, hey, like I'm such a fan of yours, I'd love to make something. And Out of Us had kind of come like right when I had taken a split from like a close friend. And I had the idea in my mind, and I had this poem I had read that really inspired me, and I brought it into the session with Austin and this writer Stella Smith and also an amazing friend, and the three of us sat down and wrote it. And again, that one was pretty fast too. And I feel like whenever the song's fast and it's just like it's a good hang and a good group of people, we spent the majority of the time like talking. And then we wrote the song.
Absolutely. And, I feel like one of the things that is quite unique that I find out with each artist that they talk about inspiring them is definitely like their environment. So like the city that they're in or just where they're at mentally. And so I'm curious, like just being out in LA and being in this area, like do you find yourself like creatively getting inspired by the city of LA?
Yeah, I definitely think I drive to a lot of my sessions. And I think like taking that journey gives my brain time to like focus in on an idea, or like I feel like a lot of people, they're like, I was in the shower, I was making dinner when I got this idea of like, I think their brain was like focused on one thing, and then the idea just kind of came through. And I feel like sometimes it happens when I'm driving, and I'll pull off and like write the idea down or like voice memo it, and then I'll come into the session with it. Yeah, definitely. I think being in LA, surrounded by so many creatives and different types of creatives and disciplines, I think is very inspiring.
Yeah, and we were talking about this earlier off camera, but find yourself like getting like not listening to music so long, you have to listen to a podcast, or like is there like other mediums of entertainment or anything like that where you get inspired by? So like that could be like film, that can be podcasts, like you talked about fashion too, so I'm curious about like other inspirations that you get outside of music.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, it's I think reading will give me the biggest like push, because I would say probably the thing I like to take the most time on is lyrics. So reading will definitely help that. I think I just used I just found inspiration. I finished Giovanni's Room, and I just took like a little paragraph from that book and worked on a song from it, that I love and I think will end up coming out. So reading definitely, yeah, exactly. When I'm making a lot of music, I tend to not listen to as much. Because whether it's like for my artist project or writing for other people, I think you just get a little like fatigued and tired, just from what you're hearing. And I think, sorry, one second. I think for me, it's like podcasts, really listening to, honestly, like what a rabbit's hole does, listening to people who don't work on music, like listening to an actor and like their journey, or like I listened to one about somebody who created a website for creatives, for freelancers, for how they can get paid, like just like things like that you can find inspiration in, because a lot of them, they have their own schools of thought on creativity, which can kind of turn everything around for you. I watch a lot of TV as well late at night when I like go to bed, and that's always nice. It's like a wind down thing, but I would say that's kind of, reading is probably the main thing for inspiration.
That's huge. I feel like, especially like what we do, I feel like a major factor is like just getting inspirations from all over, as I was mentioning. But you know how like you go on YouTube and you like see an actor and you kind of like get like each movie that they talked about in length? I forgot what it's called. I think it was like Actor Roundtable. No, it's the Roundtable.
Yeah,
and, like,
the variety.
Yeah, the variety thing. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting because you kind of get like a new perspective of how they're able to navigate like their career, like things they learn. And so that's quite intriguing.
Yeah, totally. I love watching those. I love the Actors on Actors, like all of those. Yeah, I just like hearing other people's take on creativity. I feel like it's constantly trying to figure out the process. For me, like when you write a song, there was a period where I was like really trying to get it down to like a science, which I couldn't do. But you know what I mean? If I do this, this, and this, then I'm like setting myself up for success with the song. So I feel like I was listening to a lot of other creatives take on like their process, and kind of what I found is like it's kind of different every time.
Yeah, and I'm curious about like what you learned within that process, because especially as you probably already know, like every artist has like a different mentality of how they go about their process. And so I'm kind of curious on like with your process, like what are some things that you learned? What are some of the things that work? Like just dive me in.
In a weird way, I think making myself busy with other like creative endeavors really helps me. I'm somebody who I'm always thinking about music, and if I'm doing other things, whether it's like DJing or like costume design or like things like that, it allows me to maybe be a little bit more present when I am sitting down to like work on music. Or again, like I said, like the idea will kind of catch me when I'm not searching for it as much. Because I think if I wake up and I'm like, oh, I really want to write a song today, I don't know if I'm always setting myself up for success when I do something like that. But if I was working on something else that's creative, I will find myself like humming a melody that I like, and then I'll go sit down and it just kind of happens and I get out of the way in that sense.
Yeah, because it's like kind of like you miss it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like that feeling of like, okay, like you can't really just be like, okay, like, am I in the mood for making a song? I feel like that's something that comes naturally, like it's kind of like the same thing as like writing or anything creative. Like that's something that you gotta like, at least for me, like you gotta kind of like get the feeling of. I don't think you can force it, because if you force it, it doesn't feel as authentic,
Yeah, I think it's a balance of like showing up every day and trying something, and who knows what it'll be,
Yeah. And so one of the things I'm curious about too, especially learning about it, such being in the city in LA, everyone is meeting everyone. Like everyone, at least in the creative scene, is like everyone's trying to get connected. And so I'm curious about it from, just you being in the city. Like, how is it as far as like people just connecting with each other, creators connecting, like the community aspect of it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's there if you want it. Like, I think everybody is really nice and welcoming, and it's as long as you put yourself out there, you'll find your people. And like I love it. Took a little bit of time, but I love like all of my close collaborators, my friends. Like I feel like I've found my people here. Always looking to add more. But I think there's such a wide variety of music, of actors, of visual artists here, so I think there's so many people to meet every day, and so it's just a matter of putting yourself out there, honestly, and having a good attitude.
Absolutely. And one of the other questions I wanted to ask is, it's like, we already know your strong sense of feeling of love in your music, but I'm curious on like what other emotional or subjects that you focus on with your music that also like has like a strong importance.
Yeah. I think in my earlier music, it was a lot of like, I think it was easier for me to write about like sad feelings of like longing, I think longing was like a big thing of like wanting something out of somebody that maybe I wasn't gonna get, or wishing I was in a different place, like career-wise, or just like in my own personal growth. It was a lot of like reflective of like, okay, but how am I the problem? Like, how am I doing something that's like not helping my situation? It was a lot of internal reflection in my music. So,
and what's so beautiful about that is like all those components tie into your growth. And I feel like that's like another thing that I really hear about your music. Like I hear the growth, and like I really, and like it's so interesting because all the lyrics and all the things you talk about feel very relatable, but it's just about how you present it, whether it be from the production or from the vocals, that feels so unique. And one of the things I'm quite curious to talk about too, I talked about it a bit, but Live Back, the live video, I thought in my opinion, I thought that was very, very unique because it felt so personal. And just the way it was shot and how it was like the creative direction and everything was so unique. And I'm curious on hearing the process about that.
Yeah. So that one actually, that came like right after I had split with my manager, who is like still one of my best friends, and it was like all good. But that had like the talks for that video started like the day or like 2 days after we had decided to like end the working relationship. And so really it was like the first project where it was really just me and I wasn't bouncing ideas off of him in that sense. But my friend Ethan worked on the video with me. And I had ideas for what I wanted. I wanted it, like you said, to feel pretty like natural, like singing in your room. And he connected me with the rest of like the creative team behind that, and it was so much fun. And it really was just like an evening like shooting and singing in the room, and it was so much fun. But yeah, I don't know, that one was kind of, it ended up being a little bit more spur of the moment. Like I knew styling how I wanted and color grading and everything, and I made kind of like a pitch deck for the whole thing and sent it over to Ethan. So we just kind of worked off of that, and it was pretty straightforward. But I remember having a lot of fun that day.
And I got one last question to ask. So what's next?
Yes. I have a song I'm gonna put out soon called Turn that I'm really excited about. I made with Austin and my friend Dylan, and I'm just working on a bigger project now that I'm very, very excited about. That one I have no date for, but I have a good chunk of music for it. So just trying to build that out a bit. So definitely more music through the rest of the year. Yeah.
I'm very excited for it.
Yeah.
Madeline, it's been a pleasure to having you on.
Thank you so much.
We got to end it the right way.